When I stepped past the threshold onto the big yellow school bus, the first thing to hit my senses was the smell. A burnt rubber with sort of a sour undertone and a hint of rotten banana. Glancing down the narrow cathedral of green upright seats and the small chamber of air above them, my heart began to pound. I looked back toward the school parking lot, toward freedom. It was my last chance to break from this whole scene, take my own car. It could have been a nice solitary drive. One of my favorite experiences in life is to drive alone, in a silent car, silently, without children, in silence. No demands on my attention, just me and my freewheeling, uninterrupted thoughts. So when the teacher called that morning to say that the field trip would be canceled unless they had one more parent to ride the bus with the kids, saying yes was the sacrifice of sacrifices for me. With a final glance toward the open door, I turned to face the rows of children seated in twos and threes. The frenetic energy was already on full amp as I found my seat among them. A girl who talked incessantly offered me Cheetos. Spotting grayish dirt mixed with a kind of orange cheese powder caked in the crevices of her wrist, I declined. Then the bus driver handed out vomit bags to the adults and we were on our way. When we hit an unanticipated blizzard in the mountains and stopped at the outdoor toilet stalls, I realized that I was underprepared with my thin sweater, scarf, and flats with no socks. That's when the cold first claimed the warmth from my extremities that I wouldn't recover for the next 12 hours. That's also when I began to do the math. Until then, I had not known that a field trip could take twice as long as a normal school day. I could never have imagined that what I was saying yes to that morning was 10 hours of freezing bus ride interrupted by a period of mostly outdoor field trip activities in the chilly rain. Under these extreme stress conditions, I ate all my food well before lunchtime. The picnic lunch took place on an outdoor patio in the rain. I stood shivering, holding an umbrella over my group of 5 sweet girls while they ate. As the rain pelted me in the face, I watched carefully for any scraps of food that they might leave behind. One girl in my group named Angela stood out, not just because she was accompanied by a sign language interpreter, but because she had such a serene spirit about her, and she wore this constant radiant smile. On the ride home, the only seat available was next to her. She smiled when I sat down. The trip home was as arduous as the trip going. Bickering, bladder issues, mostly my own, body fluids, and a constant, merciless cold that seeped into my bones and threatened my sanity. It had all the elements of an Antarctic expedition, except that an Antarctic expedition would surely be quieter. Halfway home, I was nearly broken. It was too much. Finally, the stress of hunger and cold, chaos and forced extroversion had defeated me. I felt myself wanting to weep, but I knew this was not an option. I was the adult after all. I folded my legs Indian style. I took my scarf and I wrapped it around my icy cold feet. If I could focus on creating warmth in this one area, I could draw my attention away from the core coldness of my upper body. I folded my arms, tucked my chin into my chest, closed my eyes, and tried to escape inward. I thought I heard children calling my name, but I resisted the urge to respond. I would pretend to be asleep to shield myself. But in an attempt to let go of the stress, my emotional defenses were wearing. With nothing grounding me, I felt small and alone and lost. Who was I began to wonder. Had I become one of them? Was I just a child drifting on a nameless bus through obscure mountain roads on an inconsequential planet? I was actually beginning to cry. And then I felt something warm across my chest. I half opened my eyes to see Angela's hands gently placing her coat over me and tenderly tucking it behind each shoulder. Then she placed a delicate hand on my heart and gave a loving pat. This tenderness caught me off guard, and I released a few tears. Her care was vigilant, as every few minutes, when the coat began to slip, she would gingerly lift and retuck. Every touch of her hand sent a wave of warmth and calm over me. I relaxed into this feeling as I drifted off to sleep on the winding road home, abandoning myself in the pleasure of human kindness. And finally, I let my imagination swirl. When I woke, about 20 minutes later, everything was different. The entire scene was transformed. I was transformed. My humanity had been restored. And all at once, I had a voice. I yelled, "Hey, is anyone else freezing?" The kids in the back seat said they were dying. It was so hot back there. Seriously? We traded places with them, and sure enough, within a few minutes, I was roasting. The back seat must have been right over the heater. It was still noisy, but rather than resist this time, I felt caught up in it. We began singing at the top of our lungs in unison. Yes, I had become one of them. Not small and alone, but gloriously and collectively human, with hearts beating and connected. I had been rescued out of obscurity by a single act of love. I am grateful that I boarded the bus that day. I'm glad that I suffered those several hours, that I could participate in one moment of transformation. I'm glad to have been reduced to a state of smallness that I might understand what I consider true power. If I had to characterize Angela's gesture in one word, it would be motherly. This is a quiet power too often overlooked in a world that honors the daring divas and the bold policymakers and the wolves of Wall Street. Those flashy icons our children want to grow up to be merely because they seem to possess such power in the world. Rumi, the 13th century mystic poet, said, "Things are such that someone lifting a cup or watching the rain, petting a dog, or singing, just singing, could be doing as much for the universe as anyone." If that is true, then Angela is a goddess to me. This Mother's Day, I would like to honor the quiet, unseen gestures of moms and non-moms everywhere. If you find yourself having a sudden inclination to comfort, to encourage, to heal, to soothe, through the simple gift of your pure attention, that's your inner mother talking. So I say, go ahead, listen to your mother.